I would really like to learn about your life journey, what got you into energy healing, and how it has evolved for you over the years.
It's quite a long story, but I'll keep it as short as possible.
Sure.
As a teenager, I was very sensitive to other people's energies, didn't know it at the time.
Mhm.
And but I was a rock climbing instructor, so it was okay. I was spent most of my time on the mountains, you know, inadvertently at that stage being grounded by the mountains, being really grounded in the physical, climbing on rocks, really being really outdoors.
Mhm.
And one of my clients came to me one day and said to me, Oliver, you've got to go and see this doctor. Because she was a trusted client, my best client at that stage, I thought, well, yeah, okay. She says I should, I'll trust her. And I went along and he was a chiropractor. I was like, well, I didn't, nothing wrong with my back. I don't need any chiropractic services, but I'll go anyway. So I did. And of course, my back was out because I was carrying heavy rucksacks up and down the mountain. And then he did some energy work on me and sent me out the door with a small little packet of homeopathics. Now,
Okay.
my whole life, I'd been asthmatic and I'd carried this inhaler around in my pocket as a sort of safety mechanism. And within about 3 weeks, I realized that I wasn't using the inhaler. And then a month later, I completely stopped using it. And I realized at that point that even though I couldn't feel it, energy had changed me somehow. Okay. And it was about a week later that the same client phoned me up and said, he's running a workshop this weekend. Do you want to come along? And so I dropped everything and I went along to this workshop. It was a technique called body alignment technique. And I really started to get all this sort of idea of hands-on healing, where you can send energy into various body parts and see a change, immediate change happening in the person, even though the person might not be able to feel it. And we since went on to carry on and study lots more studying with various people. She became like this great aunt that would fund me because I lived hand to mouth in those days. I could just pay my rent. That was about it.
Okay.
And she was an incredible, wise older lady who really looked after me like a son in many ways. And I used to call her my great aunt.
Mhm.
And she even took me to the States where we studied NLP, hypnosis, timeline therapy. We did from the pure energy stuff, the Reikis and the crystal healings and hands-on healing, all the way across to the language side, where we've got the neuralistic programming, hypnosis. And so I came back to South Africa, where I'm originally from, with all this information and all these great ideas of trying to share it with the world. And of course, the clients didn't come, do they? They never come, right? You've got all this passion, but they just don't. So you just work with your family and your friends, and they sort of go, oh, yeah, okay, well, they're the hardest clients you're ever going to have in your life because they know you. But over time, I started to build up a small following of people. And, life has a funny way of throwing things at you. Met a girl, got married, and found myself living in the Cayman Islands. And I sort of lost track, my sort of 30s with the idea of energy healing. It was all
Mhm.
new, it was all different. Came back to South Africa when we had a big financial crisis in the world, 2006, 2007, and had stopped the rock climbing by that stage. So now I was into construction and I was building houses. And, trying it all, trying it all. And we had
Mhm.
some fantastic clients. And one of the ladies, the painters were doing the last little snagging bits and were just about to move out. And she said to me, Oliver, when my healing room is ready, you've got to come for a session. And I had no intention of going for the session. All right. I'd
Mhm.
done it all: Reiki, hypnosis, energy healing, crystals, massage therapy, chakra balancing, you name it, I'd done it. And because she was a good client, I said yes. But it was December, and I thought, and she was heavily pregnant. So I thought, she has the baby, it's Christmas, New Year, she'll forget about me. But she didn't. In January, she called me. February, she called me. March, she called me. April, May, and eventually in June, I thought I'd better say yes. Otherwise, she'd still be calling me today. And I went along for the session, knowing it all. Yeah. That naivety, that's that of that, 30 something, thinking he knows it all.
Mhm.
And it was completely different to anything I'd ever experienced in my life. In fact, I thought nothing had happened. And I left going, well, that was interesting, but I'm still the same. And I was driving home and I started to hum. And it shocked me that I was actually humming And I actually stopped the car, got out of the car, and went, was that really me humming? And I realized that, yes, it was. And it was probably the first time since being a 7 or 8 year old little boy. So, and I felt this incredible joy just flowing through me. And I was like, wow. And, but I couldn't go home and tell anybody, right? Who could I tell? No
Mhm.
one would understand me. So I didn't. And at that stage, my life was all very good on paper, married, working. Wife was in Bahrain. She wanted me to leave my job and go to Bahrain to spend time with her. And we'd been for counseling and relationship advice, and things just weren't working. And it was about a week later, after this healing, that I got this message saying, Oliver, it feels like someone has cut us apart. And energetically, part of that session I'd been through had been to unplug ourselves, to cut those relationship ties that weren't serving. And I realized then that I'd been fixated on this relationship that wasn't actually working and wasn't destined to work. We'd learned from each other what we were supposed to learn, and it was time to actually now focus on me. And I started to become very selfish with my time. I started to study again. I started to study other modalities. I started to study other traditions. And about 6 months later, I brought her a plane ticket home. We went out for dinner, and I realized then and there that the relationship was over. We both agreed that we'd get a divorce. And that was on a Thursday night. The Friday night, I was invited to a party. And of course, there I met this incredible girl who, a year later, I find myself divorced and living in the UK, where I really have now taken the whole energy healing to the next level. And that was in 2012. In the last sort of, 12 years or so, I have really rapidly transformed what I do and how I work and changed myself from working on myself. I've
Mhm.
been very, very selfish. I've only worked on myself to start with. But in that process, I figured out who I am and how I can help other people make their changes. So, in a nutshell, that's my journey. It's touched on many, many different things. And I could go into a lot more detail if you want, but I don't think the listeners want to be bored with a journey of someone coming from South Africa and find themselves in the UK.
That's really interesting and invigorating journey that you just shared with us. And something I could really, get one message. There were multiple, but one message was that you didn't give in to your fears. A lot of people would stop at certain junctures where you decided to move ahead and listen to what your energy was talking to you about. And that's where I want to, ask you the next question, that how can people face their fears, and if they are still not able to do, how can energy healing really help them out?
Everybody has fears. Absolutely. Fears are part of every single person's life, right? From a child, when we saw the curtain move in the wind, we thought it was a monster, and we called for our mother and father to come and protect us. Right? And they turned the light on, and we realized it was just the curtain or the coat hanging up over the back of the door or whatever it might have been. Right? So we've always had that fear as part of us. Right? I always look at ourselves as being these emotional beings where we have all these emotions, and they go from fear and from shame and from guilt and from anger all the way across through to love, to joy, to bliss, to peace, right? All these emotions. And we're going to experience all of these emotions. We have to experience all these emotions in our life. Now, what happens to us is we tend to get focused on the fears. Why? Because there's drama there. And we're quite addicted to drama. We are addicted to drama, right? We all know what it's like when you're driving down the road and there's traffic in the road and you get frustrated, and there's an accident on the other side of the road, and maybe you're cursing all these people who are driving so slowly, and you promise yourself that when you go past that accident, you're not going to stop and look. Okay. But of course, what do? You drive past, and of course, your head turns, you have a look, right? Because we're addicted to drama. News and social media draws our attention to drama all the time, right? Which almost traps us in this bubble of fear. How
Mhm.
often do we stop and look at a sunset or a sunrise? How often do we stop and look at a beautiful plant or beautiful flower, and not just stop and look at it, right? Because that's also part of us. But human nature, drama, drama, drama. And it goes back to us keeping ourselves safe, really, to the ancient, where we had to look out for the tigers and for the dangers out there, which we don't have in the modern world. But so we are trapped in this idea of fear. But with fear, as soon as you turn a light on a fear, it shrinks down, right? It doesn't matter how scary the monster is. If you turn the light on in the room, right, the monster doesn't seem so scary anymore.
Yeah.
It's the fact that you can't see the monster that makes it scary. And
Yes.
the more you are scared by the monster, the fear, more power the fear has over you, right? And you hear many cases of people using hypnosis and techniques to get over spider fears, and eventually they've got spiders crawling all over them, and they're actually okay with it. Now, I certainly wouldn't want to do that. Not that I'm scared of spiders, but it doesn't mean I want to have spiders crawling over me to prove anything. That same spider crawls onto you in the middle of the night in the dark, right? You are petrified. It's fear.
Yeah.
It's natural human state to protect ourselves,
Yeah.
okay, to survive. So that's why we have these fears. But once we turn that light on them, the fears have no power on us over us. When I help people look at fears, we look at the fear, see what it is, right? And then go, you know what? That fear is part of that emotional spectrum. I
Hmm.
needed to experience that, but now I don't have to live from that place anymore. So I can look at the fear and say, no, fear, you were very useful. You taught me about a little part of myself. And I'm going to forgive myself for hanging on to that fear. I'm going to thank myself for going through the process of this. And ultimately, I'm going to say, you know what, Oliver? Love yourself a little bit more now because you've achieved that. Because everything that happens in our life, from the complete fearful to the complete joy and bliss and love,
Yep.
every single aspect that you've been through in your life, the
Hmm.
black stuff, the white stuff, the gray stuff, the emotions that are maybe we consider to be negative, and the emotions we consider to be positive, all come together to make you who you are. And for that, you have to be grateful.
Yep.
Because if I only had good emotions, I'd be very unbalanced. I wouldn't be able to speak to you because I'd be completely unbalanced. But
Yep.
because we all come with this black and white, this duality, this having lived through different aspects, and every single one of our experiences, our emotions, making us who we are today, we've got to thank and start to fall in love with all those things we might consider to be fears, we might consider to be bad beliefs, we might consider to be emotional traumas, because they have made you who you are today. And without them, you wouldn't be you.
Oliver, I've often heard that our fears often manifest as ailments in our human body. And you also shared that once the energy, negative energy, enters through our aura into our body, it starts to manifest into different forms. It could be anything. And often I've heard a lot of people talk about some very chronic ailments being a repercussion of negative emotions, negative energy within our body that we are continuously manifesting. One, can energy healing really help us overcome these manifested ailments? And two, can we say they are the cure to what even modern medicine doesn't have answer at times?
Very quickly, modern medicine tends to treat the symptom rather than the cause. Okay,
Mhm.
so and that's not necessarily what we want. So when we look at things energetically, all of us started like this. Even today, we still like this to a certain degree. We're taken in emotion and go, I don't want to deal with that right now, and we almost bury it. Okay, and then the emotion pops up again. Something else will happen. Another person will come and say something, and then emotion will pop up again. And we go, oh, no, 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 I don't want to deal with that. I'm not ready to deal with that. And we hide it again. And so over time, you keep hiding these emotions, not expressing them, not speaking your truth, not expressing, not dealing with them. And you keep
Mhm.
burying it, keep hiding it. And eventually, the body says, I've tried to get you to notice these things. How am I going to get you to notice what you need to learn? And the only way we generally, the last resort for us to learn is through pain, is through an illness, is through a disease. If let's say someone who's a chronic overworker and the body's saying you've got to take some time out. No, 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 I've got another project to do. No, you've got to take some time out. No. And then eventually what happens, you keep pushing that, you've got to have some rest. And then eventually what happens, there's a chronic thing like ME or something like that, where the person just physically can't work anymore. Now, there would have been many signs before that with the body saying, listen to me, you've got to deal with this. How many people know when they're about to go on holiday vacation and they're getting ready to go and they've just got a whole week crammed full of stuff to do before they go away?
Yep.
And they're super busy and then they go away and they fall ill the moment they go away. The moment the body switches off, they fall ill. Same thing, right? Trying to do something, not listen to the body. So we've got to listen to our bodies. We've also got to express the emotions. And sometimes that's the challenge, is how do I express this, right? I don't understand it. How do I express it? And this is where the energy healer can come in and help and guide you, okay? Because with all healing, you are allowing yourself to do the healing. So the person coming to see me is doing the healing. I just provide the tool, the visualization that they can use to allow themselves to give themselves permission to heal. Even with the most basic hands-on healing, where you're channeling energy to somebody, Reiki, putting energy into something in somebody, that energy is provided, but the person receiving it is using it to heal their body. The person doing the session is not the one doing the healing. They're just providing the space and the tool and the energy so the patient, the client, can do the healing. It's a different way of looking at it, okay? So giving yourself the permission to heal is often the first step, right? So
Mhm.
by listening to this podcast, by going to see someone, it's giving yourself permission to make a change.
Yep.
And that's where your healing really starts.